Еще раз добрый день, уважаемые.
Good morning once again, dear participants of the conference. Let us start our session. The floor for the welcome address at the session is given to the head of the Federal Agency for Fishery, Mr. Ilya Shestakov. Good morning. I think still good morning, dear colleagues, dear participants of the conference. Today, we will be talking on one of the important issue of fishery industry. It's aquaculture. It's very important for the development of the industry in Russia. Yesterday, you saw the slides shown by FAO, and there are forecasts that the share of the aquaculture will be higher than capture, and indeed the culture share is growing. It is the source of replenishing the commercial stock as well, and the range of aquatic food products, and the possibility for recreational fishing, which is socially important as well. Right now, when we are developing the aquaculture of Russia, it is very important to find a balance between environment protection, production, and social aspects. We can see that pretty often some municipalities fail to do that. And what can we say about the stock of the wild salmon when, as a result of the uncontrollable culturing of the salmon, the wild salmons are perishing. The specificity of aquaculture in Russia, and the small share for the time being, is related to the rich stocks of water resources. However, in the past 7 years after the law was passed, this segment is growing with the growth rate of some 10%. We see not only the quantitative growth, but the change in the structure to meet the market demand, especially in the situation where it's necessary to substitute import. So salmon, Atlantic, and trout are important species, and the other seafood, and sturgeon. And what is important is that new projects are turning up inland, and there are large prospects for pasturing aquaculture in salmon in the Far East, for example. Jointly with the science, we are planning the location of such hatcheries, and it is important to tread carefully. We shouldn't we shouldn't disrupt the stock of the wild salmon. And science has supported that, and the mastering of Kurils Islands are allowed, and new grounds are allowed over there. 357 tons, it is 8% more than the previous year. So growing the commercial fish and seafood has doubled over the past couple of years. Talking about smart culture, I would like to emphasize the balance of the interests of the fishers and culturalists, staff of the aquaculture, and as a result of the projects that will help to increase the production despite all the constraints. Russia is responsible aquaculturist, and we reduce the environmental impact, and because sustainable culture is not possible, there are new projects, and technologies for further expansion and developing. Like there is digital projects in one of the projects, farm for farmers, fish web program, which was launched by Rossellhozbank with the Inforica company. Then there is a production of the automated feeders which can monitor the feeding and the growth. It is good also for the pen farms and for other different types of farms. Skolkovo Fund has provided a number of interesting solutions. It is automation solutions, and the principle of AI is used. The smart farms can culture sturgeon and the other types of seafood. There is high demand for Atlantic salmon. We know that the price has been growing and the import to Russia has reduced, but we are aware that the water area in Russia is limited. That's why quite promising is the production of salmon in the RAS system. We had a meeting with our colleagues from Turkey, and there is a proposal to grow the salmon species in the Black Sea, and such innovation projects are important. Of course, in the future, we will have to launch the large-scale production to increase the commercial stock without any limits. Aquaculture should develop by setting up farms that would be using the recirculating aquaculture system, taking into consideration the environmental protection standards, and it is possible to develop this still new area for Russia. It doesn't mean that we will scrap the growing fish in the pens and in the open water, but RAS is possible to increase the level of culture production. It is necessary to optimize the standards and norms in the regions. It is necessary to develop the standards for disposal of the sewage and introduction of the international standards. Quite big support for culture is given by fishery science and the research institutes. The branches of the Institute of the Fishery and Oceanography of NIRO are important stake player. Their research in squids and cetaceans and prawns is important. There are testing to grow another in the hatcheries, and there are technologies to grow laminaria and ostrich, and the list of the technologies for the aquaculture will be complemented with these technologies, and we rely upon the new sciences. The scientists from Astrakhan Institute have developed a system that made it possible to culture some species in the households, and I visited the places that I like the technologies, and I think it's quite promising. So if we have the developers of these techniques, I will be ready to buy their things. And you can grow fish, you can grow plants. It's just a mini aquarium and greenhouse at home. Of course, some constraints and sanctions limit and affect the development, such as the problems with the seeding and the forage and the feed. And I would like to note that there are new hatcheries that are being opened. There is one hatchery that started working fishing in Belarus, but we will have to address the issues with seeding to provide seeding material for our aquaculture. As far as feed is concerned, as far as forage is concerned, the government has taken to subsidy by 25% the construction of the hatcheries for salmons and for some other species. So this issue will be addressed in the near future. Dear colleagues, we are interested in cooperation with the businesses and foreign partners. We can share our experience for smart aquaculture to ensure food security due to the growth of the population. And this conference has brought together a lot of competent specialists, and I am sure that it will provide an impetus for the development of the new projects, international projects, and I wish you fruitful work, and I hope that this session will be interesting for all the participants. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, Илья Васильевич.
Thank you.
Но переходим уже к нашей основной программе.
So
it
was a welcome address. Now we will have to start our principal program. Key speakers, and I hope that the conference will not be a disappointment. And aquaculture is high on the agenda in Russia for the past couple of years, and of course the state-of-the-art technologies and high capacity of growing products is pretty close now to the most productive forms and of cattle raising. And we understand that husbandry is on land, and 2/3 of our planet surface is water table, so the aquaculture is more promising than husbandry and more promising than fishing. So the potential, the capacity is high. It hasn't been opened everywhere. That's why the name of the conference is Smart Aquaculture, the forward-looking approach to develop the industry, making use of all the state-of-the-art achievements and endeavors of the mankind. Aquaculture plays an important social role. Getting back to what we discussed yesterday, I was impressed by the FAO report. They said aquaculture is on the same level as capture, but 30% of the employees over there. But money-wise, it is much higher than capture. So the future belongs to culture. There'll be more fish grown by culture than captured. And there are many small farms still exist in the aquaculture, and many cultures manage to produce a lot. I would like to give the floor to our guest, our good partner, and it is Deputy Director General of the Department of Fishery of the Ministry of the cooperative from Kingdom of Thailand, Mr. Thunchai. Mr. Thunchai, can you hear us?
ท่านได้ยินไหมคะสวัสดีค่ะขออีกครั้งหนึ่งค่ะได้ยินครับ Да, слышно.
Yes, I am with you. Aquaculture is a traditional, multifaceted type of activity in your country, and Thailand has demonstrated high rate growth, almost 900,000 tons. That's what the FAO reported, that is produced by culture in Thailand. And Thailand is a leader in producing prawns.
почти
and
400 тысяч тонн.
almost 400,000
Господин Тхунчай,
tons.
как вы видите роль
Mr. Tхунчай,
аквакультуры
what is the
для
role
общества в
of
своей
the
стране в
aquaculture
будущем?
for
Будет ли расти
the
число
society in your
занятых
country?
в этой отрасли у вас? Или
Will there
современные
be any
технологии
growth
приведут
in
к
the
сокращению
employees,
количества
or
людей,
do you
которые
think
работают в
the
аквакультуре?
use of the state-of-the-art technologies will result in the reduction of the
ถือว่าเป็นการอุตสาหกรรม
jobs?
หลักที่ทำเงินให้กับประเทศไทยได้มาก แล้วก็เป็นหนึ่งในประเทศที่ส่งออกกุ้งมากที่สุดในโลกเลยนะคะก็เลยอยากจะถามว่าท่านเนี่ยเห็นบทบาทนะคะของการเพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำสำหรับประเทศไทยทั้งในปัจจุบันและในอนาคตยังไงนะคะแล้วก็จำนวนของผู้ที่ทำงานในสายงานด้านนี้ค่ะจะมีการเพิ่มขึ้นหรือลดลงจากการที่มองถึงเทคโนโลยีที่จะนำมาใช้ในการเพิ่มประสิทธิภาพในอุตสาหกรรมนี้ค่ะ
ครับก็ในส่วนของก่อนอื่นต้องขอบคุณคุณวาซิลีโซโรคอฟนะครับผู้ที่เป็นประธานเซกชันแล้วก็ผู้ร่วมอภิปรายแล้วก็เป็นโมเดเลเตอร์ด้วยนะฮะในส่วนของที่คำถามในส่วนของการเพาะเลี้ยงกุ้งในประเทศไทยก็ยังคงมีความสำคัญและก็เป็นบทบาทที่สำคัญในเรื่องของการส่งออกของประเทศไทยเช่นเดียวกันนะครับในปี2021นะครับคือปีที่ผ่านมานะฮะแล้วก็ในการประมงในเรื่องของการเพาะเลี้ยงกุ้งเนี่ยของประเทศไทยผลิตได้อยู่ที่ประมาณสัก300,000 กว่าตันต่อปีซึ่งเราก็มีแผนที่จะเพิ่มในเรื่องของปริมาณการผลิตเพิ่มขึ้นอันนี้คือทิศทางที่ทางประเทศไทยได้วางแผนไว้นะครับอย่างไรก็ตามเนี่ยในเรื่องของในเรื่องเซกเตอร์เรื่องของการผลิตเรื่องกุ้งนั้นเนี่ยคิดว่าการใช้เทคโนโลยีเนี่ยเข้ามามีบทบาทมากทั้งในเรื่องของเทคโนโลยีที่ใช้ในเรื่องของ IoT แล้วก็ในเรื่องของที่เกี่ยวข้องทั้ง supply chain ไม่ว่าจะเป็นเรื่องของการผลิตในเรื่องของการแปรรูปแล้วก็ในส่วนที่เป็นเกี่ยวข้องกับเรื่องของอินเทอร์เน็ตต่างๆครับเพราะฉะนั้นในเรื่องของการใช้
Господин Хунчай, у нас так идет последовательный
Mr. Hunchai, it is the consecutive interpretation. So will you please give a chance for the interpreter to interpret what you're saying? Mr. Thanchai said that, of course, the production of prawns in Thailand is an important industry. In 2021, we produced 300,000 tons of prawns, and the amount of the production is growing. That's the plan in the future. It's the trend that exists in the culture. As far as the number of the employees at the farms, the ambition is to make use of new technologies, both in production and processing of the products. New tools are regarded as like internet for the development of this industry.
ในเรื่องของเทคโนโลยีที่มาช่วยก็จะช่วยในเรื่องของการเพิ่มประสิทธิภาพในการผลิตแล้วก็มองในเรื่องของคุณภาพนะครับในเรื่องของกุ้งที่ผลิตออกมาด้วย
Технология будет помогать в повышении
And the technologies will be used to increase the efficiency of the production and to improve the quality of the products. It will result in lower prices for raw materials.
ไม่แน่ใจว่าได้ตอบครอบคลุมตามคำถามที่เขาได้ถามหรือยังเลย
I hope I have answered your
Да,
question.
спасибо большое.
Yes, thanks a lot.
ค่ะขอบคุณมากค่ะ
А, Я хотел бы слово сейчас
And now I'd
предоставить. У
like
нас
to
есть
give the
новый
floor.
центр,
We have a
образовался
new
буквально
center that
последние
has been
10 лет, новый
established
центр
over the last
аквакультуры.
10 years, the Center
Это
for
Турция.
Agriculture,
Очень сильный
Aquaculture,
рывок произошел
Turkey. So
буквально
they
за
have
несколько лет,
made
при том,
great
что
progress
аквакультура
over the last
насчитывала
recent
там
years,
многие годы развития.
though they have been developing aquaculture for many years
произошло это
even
в том
before
числе
that. And
за счет
this
того, что
success
правительство
is
Турции
also due
внедрило
to
несколько
the
программ
implementation
поддержки
of
аквакультуры.
support measures by the
Сегодня у нас
government.
присутствует
And
господин
today
Сагун, это
with us
вице-президент
we have
компании Сагун.
Mr. Sagun, the vice
Господин Сагун,
president
компания у вас
from
является
Sagun
одним
Company.
из
So your
крупнейших
company
производителей
is
в
one of
Турции.
the leading
Как вы
producers
видите,
in
дальнейшее
Turkey.
развитие
So
рыбоводных
how do you
технологий
view
и
the future
какие, на ваш
development
взгляд,
of
наиболее
aquaculture
перспективные направления
developments and
способны
what
дать
are
наибольший
the
экономический эффект?
most dynamic developments and areas for the future?
So, thank you. I'd like to thank once more to the organizers of the event and the ministry for giving me this chance. Before starting to my speech, I'd like to give a brief summary of who am I and what we are doing. So beside of representing my family company, I'm also the vice chairman of Exporters Association of Animal Products in Turkey, and also the chairman of Turkish-Japanese Business Council. So today, currently in my family company, what we are doing is we are farming 5 different species of fish, which are bluefin tuna, salmon trout, portion size, small size trout, and sea bass and sea bream. So our farming activities consists of seawater and freshwater farming. Beside that, we are also making wild catching with our boats in both 3 seas of Turkey, because Turkey, as you said, is now developing a lot in the aquaculture industry. This is thanks to the geographical position of the country, because we are surrounded with 3 seas with all sides. So, of course, in order to talk about the current position of Turkish aquaculture, we must look at the history of what we have done. And here I brought you some figures to see where the Turkish aquaculture sector has came from. So from the years 2000 and even before that, in the 80s, 1980s, the farming in Turkey have started with trout. And after 2000s, we can see that there is a 2-digit growth every year in the production of the sector. And you can also view here about the export figures of the sector. Export was very important for our sector, because this was the strength given to our sector, our companies to grow. And from the year 2000, from $46 million, so 2 years ago, at year 2020, 2019, we have reached to $1 billion level. So you can see that this growth from $40 million to $1 billion, of course, was thanks to the many players in the sector who give their passion, who give their heart to this production. And currently, this year, Turkish seafood sector is aiming to exceed $1.5 billion in exports revenue. So, which makes Turkey actually the second largest aquaculture country in Turkey. In Europe. First one is Norway, as you can appreciate, and Turkey, after Norway, is now the second biggest seafood sector in Europe. 85% of these export numbers are related to aquaculture products, which are, as I explained, 5 different products which are farmed in Turkey: tuna, trout, and sea bass and sea bream. So currently our relationship with Russia in the exports have developed a lot thanks to the salmon trout and trout exports. Our export numbers are already developing and exceeded $150 million for the last year. But in order for you to see, I have put in my presentation the first quarter results of last year. So currently, salmon trout is farmed mainly in the Black Sea part of Turkey. And in order to produce the smolt of the fish, we are farming fresh rainbow trout in the freshwater and then delivering these babies from 500 grams to 1 kilo to the Black Sea. So as you can appreciate, Russia and Turkey, we are sharing the same geography and same sea in the Black Sea coast, which is also giving an opportunity for Russia for growth in the Black Sea part. But currently, due to this growth and due to this direction that the sector is going, we have started to face some problems, natural problems. These are mostly related to the temperature issues, which we cannot control. Also some microbiological problems, which can be monitored and can be controlled. But beside all of that, now the direction of Turkey and all the developed seafood producer countries is turning to RAS systems. And RAS systems, as some of you might know, means recirculating aquaculture systems. So what we do here is we are using the same water by trying to control the temperature, by trying to control the microbiological activities, oxygen, and all parameters according to the need of the fish. Currently, as my company, we are also continuing a project. Here you can see I'm sorry. Here you can see a video of what it looks like a RAS system. I couldn't open the video, sorry. Yes, they helped us. So with the oxygen generators, you can control the oxygen levels. With UV filters, you can control the bacteria and the virus activities. So in order to create the optimum conditions for the fish, now this, we can say, is the future that we are now going to. Because the traditional cage farming for today is creating difficulties because of the biomass increase in the areas. And there are many options of fish. You can change the temperature and oxygen needs according to different species, and you can produce different species in this RAS systems, which is another big advantage. Other than that, again, some of you might know, the biggest cost of production of fish is related to the feed. And currently, what we are feeding the fish is mostly the wild fish. So we are catching wild fish in the oceans and the seas, and we are turning them into flour and putting inside the fish feed. Beside the fish meal, what we put is wheat, corn, soy, different types of vegetable and animal protein sources. We are also operating a feed factory, and we see the need of, for the future, we see the need of creating a sustainable, more nature-friendly and continuous way of feed production. So we also see that for the future, there will be a potential for microalgae and insect production in order to feed the fish. Maybe this might sound interesting for some of you, but I can say that in near future, we are going to eat the fish which is fed by the insects, because by the demand increase, there is no such big supply from the wildlife to feed all this fish. So we might feel comfortable by thinking that the fish are already eating insects in the natural life. So again, we are going to simulate the same way. So thank you again for this opportunity and respects. Thank you.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you. Thank you very much. On our part, we sincerely hope that your company will also execute and implement projects in Russia. I think we have all the prerequisites for that. And now I'd like to continue with the report that was interrupted due to technical reasons. Mr. Khunchang.
ฮัลโหลค่ะ ท่านถาวรได้ยินไหมคะ
Да, я извиняюсь.
Sorry.
ได้ยินครับ
So слышно.
Yes, we can hear you.
Мы слушаем.
Yes, we can continue to
เหมือนกันค่ะ
report.
ครับได้ยิน
เริ่
ใช่
ม
ไหมครับ
ได้ยินค่ะ เริ่มได้เลยค่ะ
เริ่มเลยนะครับก็ก่อนอื่นต้องขอบคุณนะครับที่เชิญทางประเทศไทยเนี่ยเข้าร่วมในเรื่องของการอภิปรายในครั้งนี้ในหัวข้อ Aquaculture Production in the Kingdom of Thailand and its Social Role นะครับ
So first of all, I'd like to extend my gratitude for the invitation of our Department of Fishery from Thailand to take part in this discussion and to tell you about the situation in the Kingdom of Thailand.
ที่ไม่สามารถเดินทางเข้าร่วมประชุมที่รัสเซียได้เนื่องจากว่าเมื่อวานนี้วันที่ 21 กันยายนเป็นวันครบรอบ 96 ปีที่ก่อตั้งกรมประมงของประเทศไทยครับ
Sorry for not being able to be with you physically in St. Petersburg on the 21st of September. We celebrated 96th anniversary of our fishery department establishment in the Kingdom of Thailand. I hope that next year we'll be able to attend this forum in person.
ประเทศไทยเนี่ยเป็นประเทศที่มีต้องการผลผลิตสัตว์น้ำเนี่ยค่อนข้างมากจากสไลด์จะเห็นได้ว่าประเทศไทยในปี 2021 มีสัตว์น้ำที่ประเทศไทยได้ใช้ประมาณ 4.35 ล้านตัน
Thailand is a country where we have the production of aquatic animals for domestic use and also for export. And as for the water resources of Thailand, in 2021, we have totally produced 4,352,000 tons of production.
2.3 ล้านตันหรือ 54.77% แล้วก็นำเข้า 1.96 ล้านตันหรือประมาณ 45.23% ครับ
And we can produce about 2,383,000 tons. It is about 54.77%, and we can import 1,969,000 tons. It is about 45.23%.
เป็นการบริโภคภายในประเทศประมาณ 52.52% แล้วก็ส่งขายออกไปต่างประเทศ 47.48% ครับ
And the figures that were included into the domestic consumption, it amounts to 52.52%, and as for their export, 48%.
สำหรับถ้าดูในเรื่องของจำแนกออกเป็นจากการจับจากธรรมชาติแล้วก็ในส่วนที่เป็นจากการเพาะเลี้ยงนะครับก็พบว่าปริมาณก็จับจากธรรมชาติอยู่ที่ 59% ซึ่งมากกว่าในส่วนที่มาจากการเพาะเลี้ยงนะครับ
And according to the data that we have, we see the catch of aquatic animals is more than aquaculture production.
ในส่วนนี้ก็จะมาจากทางทะเลเนี่ยมากกว่านะครับจากน้ำจืดเช่นเดียวกันในเรื่องของกรณีของการเพาะเลี้ยงก็เช่นเดียวกันมีการเพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำชายฝั่งเนี่ยมากกว่า
And we also see that capture, sea capture, marine capture is more than freshwater capture. And also in aquaculture sector, freshwater capture is
ม
more.
องในมูลค่าแล้วเนี่ยในเรื่องของการเพาะเลี้ยงจะสูงกว่าที่จับมาจากธรรมชาติ
And we know and we see that the value of aquaculture is more than the value of capture in the natural
ใน
environment.
ภาพสไลด์นี้เนี่ยก็จะเห็นได้ว่าในส่วนของที่เป็นปริมาณแล้วก็ของมูลค่าในเรื่องของการจับแล้วก็ในเรื่องของการเพาะเลี้ยงในประเทศไทยสัดส่วนในเรื่องของการจับจากธรรมชาติอาจจะสูงกว่าจากการเพาะเลี้ยงจากสไลด์ด้านบนครับ
And on this slide, we can see that the number of production that we get from capture in natural environment is more than the production in aquaculture sector.
ว่าในส่วนของที่เป็นมูลค่าในเรื่องของการเพาะเลี้ยงจะสูงกว่าในเรื่องของการจับจากธรรมชาติครับ
And on this slide, we can also see that the value of aquaculture exceeds the value of capture in natural environment.
ในการเพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำในประเทศไทยมีจำนวนฟาร์มเมื่อเปรียบเทียบ3ปีตั้งแต่ปี19ถึง21ในส่วนของที่เป็นฟาร์มเพาะนะครับก็จะมีเพิ่มขึ้นทุกปีในขณะที่ในส่วนของที่เป็นฟาร์มเลี้ยงแล้วก็จำนวนของเกษตรกรเพิ่มขึ้นแล้วก็ลดลงเล็กน้อยในปี21ครับ
And on this slide, we can see that according to the data from 2019 up to 2021, we've seen that the number of hatcheries was growing every year, and number of farms and farmers has dropped a little in 2021.
ในส่วนของสไลด์นี้จะเห็นได้ว่าในภาพรวมการเพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำชายฝั่งก็ยังคงมีปริมาณที่สูงกว่าทางน้ำจืดนะครับแล้วในกลุ่มที่เลี้ยงของสัตว์น้ำชายฝั่งก็จะประกอบไปด้วยกุ้งหอยปลาแล้วก็ปูครับ
And on this slide, we can see that the coastal aquaculture exceeds the capture figures of freshwater animals, and the most popular freshwater animals are shrimps, clams, fish, and crabs.
ในสไลด์นี้จะเห็นได้ว่าในปี 2013-2014 ปริมาณการเพาะเลี้ยงจากชายฝั่งจะลดลงอย่างมากทั้งนี้เนื่องจากว่าประเทศไทยเกิดปัญหาในเรื่องของโรคกุ้ง
And also on this slide, we can see that in 2013, coastal aquaculture was in a detriment state because of the early death of shrimps.
สำหรับสัตว์น้ำจืดที่เป็นการเพาะเลี้ยงมีจำนวนที่เป็นคุณค่าทางเศรษฐกิจอยู่9ชนิดนะครับตามสไลด์
And on this slide, we can see freshwater aquatic animals that are quite economically efficient. In Thailand, there are 9 types of
ใน
them.
ส่วนของสไลด์นี้จะเห็นได้ว่าปลานิลจะเป็นปลาที่เป็นสัตว์น้ำที่ผลิตได้มากที่สุดในเชิงของปริมาณแล้วก็มูลค่านะครับ
This slide shows that tilapia is the most important in terms of volume and in terms of quantity and value. It is easy to farm and it is quite
ลองลงมาก็จะเป็นปลาดุก
resilient
catfish แล้
in
วก็กุ้ง
terms
กล้ามกราม
of diseases.
За ней следует сом и
Catfish.
гигантская речная креветка.
And as well as freshwater prawn are
ใน
also
การเลี้ยง
good.
สัตว์น้ำจืดในประเทศไทยแบ่งออกเป็น4ประเภทนะครับก็คือการเลี้ยงในบ่อการเลี้ยงในร่องสวนนะครับการเลี้ยงในนาข้าวแล้วก็เลี้ยงในกระชัง
Пресноводная аквакультура Таиланда по месту
Freshwater
выращивания можно
aquaculture
разделить на
in
4
Thailand
основных
could be
типа.
broken down
Пруды,
into
рисовые поля,
4 major
садовые
types.
канавки
It
и
is
садики.
ponds, paddy fields,
ก็
ditch,
ในส่วน
and
ที่
cage.
ผ่านมาของปี 20 กับ 19 ก็มีการเพิ่มขึ้น แล้วก็ลดลงเล็กน้อยครับในส่วนของที่เป็นพื้นที่จำนวนฟาร์ม แล้วก็ในเรื่องของปริมาณและมูลค่า
И в 2019 году и 2020
In 2019 and in 2020, the number of the farms is fluctuating, not a lot.
สำหรับในส่วนของที่เป็น4สัตว์น้ำเศรษฐกิจทางด้านชายฝั่งเราสไลด์ถัดไปนะครับก็จะมี4ชนิดนะครับก็จะประกอบไปด้วยกุ้งแล้วก็ในส่วนของปลาครับ
И на этом слайде мы видим 4
The slide
вида
shows
экономически
4
важных
types of
животных
the economically
слоноватых
viable,
воды,
economically
такие как
important
белоногая
species
креветка,
like
ванамей,
Pacific
тигровая
white shrimp,
креветка, белый морской окунь и
tiger
каменный
prawn,
окунь.
Asian sea bass,
ส
and
ไลด์ถัดไป
grouper.
อันนี้ก็เป็นพื้นที่แล้วก็จำนวนฟาร์มนะครับซึ่งในปี 20 เมื่อเทียบกับปี 19 ก็มีจำนวนที่ลดลงเล็กน้อยครับในแต่ละชนิด
На этом слайде мы видим
The slide
количество ферм
shows
каждого
the
вида животного.
number
И видим,
of the
что
farms
вот
for each
в
type of
2020
species, and we
году
can see that in
количество ферм
2020
уменьшается
the
и
number of the farms
увеличивается
was
по зависимости
both
от каждого
going
вида животных.
down and up for different species.
ประเทศไทยได้มีการให้มาตรฐานฟาร์มทั้งในส่วนของที่เป็นมาตรฐานระดับประเทศแล้วก็มาตรฐานของนานาชาติตามสไลด์ครับ
Таиланд установил стандарты для аквакультуры.
Thailand has adopted a number of the standards, both at the national level and international level, as the slide
ใน
shows.
การสไลด์ถัดไปครับในการเพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำก็มีการพัฒนาในเรื่องของการเพาะเลี้ยงทั้งในเรื่องของพัฒนาพันธุกรรมในเรื่องของการเพาะเลี้ยงในเรื่องของการพัฒนาเรื่องของคุณภาพน้ำแล้วก็ในส่วนที่เป็นการให้อาหารตามสไลด์
И на этом слайде мы видим
This slide
инновации в
shows
аквакультуре
the
Таиланда,
innovations in
которые
agriculture
делятся на
sector.
4 типа.
4 types,
Это именно технологии
namely,
улучшения породы рыб
it is
и морских водных
genetic
животных,
improvement
технология
for
разведения
fish and
водных животных,
aquatic
технология
animals,
кормления и
breeding,
технология улучшения
water
качества
quality
воды.
improvement, and the feeding
สไล
improvement.
ด์ถัดไปครับในส่วนของบทบาทในเรื่องของการเพาะเลี้ยงต่อทางด้านสังคม ก็ตั้งแต่ในเรื่องของฟาร์มการขนส่งในเรื่องของการเก็บในเรื่องของการขาย processing แล้วก็เรื่องของ market นะครับก็มีบทบาท
И на этом слайде мы видим роль аквакультуры в социальной сфере.
The aquaculture plays an important role in the social sector, creating jobs in different sectors to create value, like farms, transport, refrigerated storage, etc.
ไปครับในส่วนที่เป็นบทบาทที่สำคัญก็คือบทบาททางด้านเศรษฐกิจ แล้วก็ในส่วนของที่เป็นเกษตรกรแล้วก็ในเรื่องของสถาบันซึ่งมีการจดตั้งสถาบันที่เกี่ยวข้องนะครับจำนวน883สถาบันแล้วก็มีสมาชิก 35,000 กว่าคนนะครับเช่นเดียวกันกับในเรื่องของ processing ก็จะมีสถาบันที่จัดตั้งขึ้นแล้วก็มีสมาชิก 9,000 กว่าคน
Роль аквакультуры еще в социальной сфере и в экономике страны.
The role of the aquaculture in the social sector could also cover 3 elements, namely, it is the economic role, the prospect to provide for the farmers' livelihood and institutional role. The Department of Fishery in Thailand provide a helping hand to unite the farming communities, which unite 9,622 members, and there are 9,000 that are engaged in processing.
ในการรวมกลุ่มก็ทำให้ทางกรมประมงประเทศไทยสามารถที่จะส่งเสริมเกษตรกรให้รวมกลุ่มแล้วก็การเข้าถึงเรื่องของการตลาดทั้งออฟไลน์และออนไลน์
More than that, the Department of Fishery of Thailand provides for the unification of the farmers, encouraging the farmers to set up accounts and group in the social media.
นะครับซึ่งก็เกี่ยวข้องกับ SDG ที่ 1, 2, 3, 5, 8 และ 14 ตามสไลด์ครับ
The aquaculture of Thailand follows the sustainable development goals. Those goals are listed at the slide. There are 1, 3, 5, 8, and 14.
สุดท้ายก็คือสุดท้ายแล้วเนี่ยทางประเทศไทยก็ได้ให้ความสำคัญต่อการเพาะเลี้ยงโดยเฉพาะของกลุ่มขนาดเล็กเพราะว่าประมาณ 90% ของผู้เพาะเลี้ยงสัตว์น้ำก็จะเป็นขนาดเล็กนะครับซึ่งปีนี้ในประเทศไทยก็ได้จัดสนับสนุนในเรื่องของการประมงพื้นบ้านขนาดเล็กครับ
The last slide shows that the Department for Fisheries supports the farmers, small farmers, because they account for 90% of all the farming community of Thailand. And in 2022, the Department of Fisheries has arranged an exhibition on aquaculture. Thank you for listening.
Спасибо, господин Хунчай. Надеемся,
Thanks a
что в
lot,
следующем
Mr.
году вы
Hunchai.
найдете возможность
Hope that next year
лично
you
присоединитесь к
will
нам.
find an
Есть много
opportunity to
вопросов,
join
и
the
нам,
forum
чтобы обменяться
in
опытом.
person.
В нашей
We have a
стране
lot of questions for
аквакультура
you,
тоже
and we'll be
развивается,
interested to
хотя, конечно,
exchange
объем еще
opinions,
не
because
такие,
the
как в Казани.
aquaculture in
Спасибо.
this country is developing,
Много говорилось
not
в первый день
at
нашего
such
форума
a
о том,
scope
что
yet. A lot was mentioned
целый ряд
at our
ограничительных
forum, that
ограничений,
there
которые
is a
сейчас
number
есть в
of the
мире,
constraints that do
сказываются
exist in the
и на
world, and
логистику, и на
they affect
производство.
both the
Но
logistics
есть и
and
положительные
production.
примеры.
But there are
Евразийский
good
экономический
examples.
союз
The
в плане
activity of the
аквакультуры
Eurasian
достаточно
Economic
быстро
Union,
развивается, и я хотел бы слово
is
предоставить
developing its
директору
aquaculture
департамента
quite
агропромышленной
fast. I would
политики
like to give
Евразийской
floor
экономической
to the
комиссии
director of the
господину Арутюняну.
Department of the
Расскажите,
Agro-Industrial
какие сейчас
Policy
тренды
in
в развитии
the
аквакультуры
Eurasian
ЕС наметились, и насколько вообще
Economic
динамично
Union,
развивается
Mr. Arutunian. What
отрасль
are the
на
trends
едином
and how
экономическом
dynamic is
пространстве?
the development of the industry
Спасибо, Василий Игоревич.
in the
Спасибо
Union?
за
Thank you,
приглашение, а также за
Vasily. Thank you
организацию этого
for
замечательного
the
мероприятия,
invitation
в
and
частности, этого
organization
панельного
of this
обсуждения.
great
Я должен
happening
сказать,
and
что
this
за последние
panel
несколько
session.
лет у нас
I would like to
действительно
state that
заметна
indeed over the
динамика
past
положительная
couple
во
of
всех
years
странах
there is a
Евразийского
positive
экономического союза, и в
dynamic in all the
частности, мы
countries
как
of the Eurasian
организация особое
Economic Union,
внимание уделяем
and
вопросам
we as
продовольственной
a
безопасности в
union
наших странах. На сегодняшний
have
день хотел
high
бы
on
просто отметить, что у нас
have the
уровень
issues of food security
самообеспеченности
high on
стран
the
Евразийского
agenda, and the
экономического
level
союза
of the
составляет
self-reliance
93%.
is
А рыба,
93%.
белое
As
мясо,
far as fish
белки,
and
которые мы получаем как от
protein
аквакультуры, так и от
we
любой
have from
деятельности на
aquaculture
сегодняшний
and
день
any other
являются
activity
качественным продуктом,
is
который
a
в
high
какой-то
quality
степени
product
обеспечивает как количественные факторы, так и качественные факторы нашего
covers
производства.
both the quality
ask you for the
and the
remote
quantity
control.
factors.
Можно попросить пульт for the remote control? Thank you. Так, хотел бы поделиться с вами некоторой информацией
I would like
по
to share
статистике.
some information
Динамика роста
with
производства
you.
продукции
Statistically,
аквакультуры в
the
Евразийском экономическом
growth
союзе,
in
то есть
the Eurasian
это Армения,
Economic
Беларусь, Казахстан,
Union, it
Кыргызстан и
is
Российская
Armenia,
Федерация,
Belarus,
увеличилась в
Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and
1,7
Russia has
раза за
grown
5 лет.
by
Вы видите, динамика
1.7 times
практически
over the past
во всех
5
странах,
years.
как в
You
Армении,
see there is
Беларуси, в
growth
Казахстане, в Кыргызстане, в
registered
частности,
virtually in
очень резко
all
увеличилось
the
производство. И, конечно,
countries,
инвестиции в этих
and
направлениях
the
увеличиваются
investments
практически во
have
всех
been
странах.
increased
Должен
virtually
также
in
заметить,
all
что мы,
the
как
countries.
площадка Евразийского
And
экономического союза,
we,
совместно
as
с Росрыболовством,
the
на сегодняшний
platform
день
of the
прорабатываем
Eurasian
несколько
Union, jointly
направлений,
with
как с точки зрения
Rosrybolovstvo,
развития
Russian Federal
устойчивой
Agency,
аквакультуры. Наши коллеги
developing
говорили
the
о
policies for
технологических
sustainable
решениях, о
aquaculture. Our colleagues
закрытого
have been
цикла,
talking
использования
about the technology
биофильтров и других
solutions
технологий на сегодняшний
using
день, которые доступны
RAS
в мировой практике.
systems,
Мы также на сегодняшний день
buyer
работаем
filters,
над
etc.
аналитической
We
составляющей с
also
точки зрения
engaged
платформы цифровой, которую мы
in
создаем,
the
и также обсуждаем с нашими коллегами
digitalization,
с
developing the
Росрыболовства. И для нас
digital
очень важна
platform,
также
discussing it with our
образовательная
colleagues
составляющая. Мы
with
недавно обсуждали
Rosrybolovstvo.
проект на
Another
5 стран.
aspect of our
По
activity is
статистике,
education.
поставки рыбы в
We've
рамках
been
взаимной
developing
торговли
projects for 5
государств-членов
countries,
Евразийского
statistically
экономического
talking
союза
about the trade
тоже
between the member
выросла.
states
Как
of the
видите, в
Union.
2016
There is a
году
growth
она
registered. In
составляла
2016,
около
it
130
was
тысяч
some
тонн. На сегодняшний день это
130,000 tons.
207
Now
тысяч
it
тонн.
is
И отдельно по странам,
207,000
видите, практически
tons.
везде у
And
нас
you can
заметна
see
положительная
that
динамика.
country breakdown
Также
shows
по планам
positive
производства, поскольку
dynamics.
комиссия
There are production
постоянно
plans
ведет
adopted,
работу
and
на
the
регулярной основе с
committee
нашими партнерами
is
для того, чтобы
jointly
идентифицировать инвестиционные возможности в странах.
analyzing
сегодняшний день, как
the
вы видите, в
investment
разных стратегических
opportunities in the
документах
countries, and
отдельно
there
взятых
are a
стран
number
Союза
of
на
the
сегодняшний
policy
день намечены
documents
индикативные
that
показатели.
have
И во
set
всех
the
странах, в
indicative
частности Казахстан, имеет очень
parameters
амбициозную
for all the
задачу
countries.
увеличения
Kazakhstan has quite an
производства
ambitious
в 40
program
раз.
to
В Кыргызстане
increase the
это
production by
3
40
раза. В других
times,
странах,
3 times in
как вы видите, в
Kazakhstan,
Российской
and
Федерации
the other
2,1%,
countries
в
also
Республике Армения
are
1,2%,
quite ambitious.
идентичный
In
показатель
Russia it is
у нас
2.1,
по
in Armenia
Беларуси.
1.2, and
Также
Belarus
хотел бы
1.2
отметить ту
times
работу,
growth as
которую мы
well.
проводим на
I would like to
площадке
talk
Евразийской
about
экономической
the work,
комиссии.
the efforts
И
that
та работа,
have been
которая на
undertaken
сегодняшний
at
день за
the Eurasian
последний
Economic
год резко
Committee,
активировалась.
and the work
Это,
that
во-первых, меры по
was
ресурсному
made
обеспечению. Наши
active.
коллеги из
There are a
Российской
number of
Федерации, из
measures to
Росрыболовства,
provide
руководитель
resources.
Росрыболовства подчеркнул те
Rosrybolovstvo have been talking about the state support given to the industry in Russia, and virtually all the strategic policies of the member states pay special attention to the state support to developing feed industry, harmonizing the standards, and we are harmonizing the legislature of all the 5 countries as far as provision of feeds. We are looking into new financial tools, and today the Commission regards the possibility of attracting the financial resources of the Independent Bank of Development, which will target the integration and innovation projects of the Union. So you can see that the other measures are developing aquaculture, cooperation in science and innovation, and our colleagues from Turkey have been talking about the new feeding techniques, and we have been talking about using the protein of locust, and that's well is being used in the world, and that type of protein is used in feeding of athletes in sports industry, and harmonizing the standards is one of the key goals as well. The total policies and approaches for sustainable fishery and aquaculture initiated by Rosrybolovstvo of Russia, and it involved all the 5 countries, and we have defined a number of the areas as far as developing the fishery. It is environmental standards using ESG principles, and we are cooperating with both the Agency for Fishery and the Roskачество. It is the quality regulatory watchdog, and we are implementing the projects in the other sectors than producing high value added products, and we have been discussing it with our colleagues, and many member states have technologies to increase value. Another area of cooperation is introduction new state-of-the-art technology, and the last but not the least is academic mobility. The students of all the member states of the Union should have an opportunity to get the best education available in the varsities of the member states. And that's what I meant to say, to talk about in brief. I'll be happy to answer any questions, if any. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Indeed, the figures are very impressive when you see 551%, but of course it is related to the low basic line, and we have just started the development of the aquaculture, but when you see the tables breakdown, they try to make China as a separate entity because their bar is so high that the others are just somewhere too below. I would like to give floor to Wine Rainey. It's the company that is a very powerful, formidable producer of the fish feed and the manufacture of the equipment for the production of the feed for the fish. And the federal minister mentioned that there was a decision taken by the government in Russia to support construction of the plants for producing feed for fish, and I think the infrastructure will be growing because it's not possible to farm fish without feed, and we are just hopeful that our foreign partners will provide a helping hand for us to develop the infrastructure for the plants for feed. So the floor is yours, to Mr. Ryan, when we will achieve 500 million tons in Russia.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rennie Chen from FarmSun, China. First of all, I have to say thank you to this organization of this forum, that we can have this chance to share our experience in the aqua feed processing technologies. Maybe something we have shared here will contribute a little bit works in the develop of the Russian aquaculture feed processing. So who is FarmSun? FarmSun is an integrated solution provider basically for the agriculture and animal husbandry machineries. The main business of FarmSun, this is animal feed and farming. This is our main business. And then we have silo plants, oil and fats, and food processing. Actually, our main business, it matches the Russian market quite much because Russian has a huge territory for the farmings. And this is the brand owners that we have achieved in China domestically and internationally. Because of time, I will not share them one by one. Okay, this is a globalization of our locations. We have one overseas manufacturing base, which is in Egypt, and we have 6 R&D centers all over the world, 3 domestically and 3 overseas. And you can see the overseas R&D centers, which is in Danish, Germany, and USA. And we have 5 joint venture companies 8 branch companies and 54 representative offices all around the world. Okay, this is our staffs. Basically, we attract the most talented R&D engineers from around the world, like in Europe and USA, using their technologies to modernize the most advanced equipments and produce them in China and give the best, the best option of the machines and solutions for our customers. And this is our branches. And this is the projects we have made all over the world. Until now, we have made over 8,800 projects all around the world. And you can see these numbers that in different places. Regarding the aquaculture projects, these are the 4 machines we're going to use in the aquaculture project. First of all, pulverizer and extruder, dryer, and vacuum coaters. I have detailed description later. And this is manufacturing facilities, the intelligent and fully automatic assembly lines of Famsan factory. And this is our testing center, not only for ourselves, but also for our customers. Okay, the analysis of the global cold water fish farming. Well, from here we can see that the numbers of the needed capacity for the aqua protein has been raising for many, many years. All these years the proteins are becoming. And the fish proteins comparing with poultry or the pork meat, the FCI for the feed is smaller. And aquaculture proteins contains even better nutrition according to studies for human bodies. That's why the need for aquaculture proteins is increasing all the time. And we have a number of the top 10 countries of this aquaculture production of the world. Here, these aquaculture products are for both river products and marine products. Because of the population of China, China has contributed a huge percentage here, over 80%. And because of this large percentage of the production of aqua production, we have gained a lot of experiences in the processing of aqua feed and aqua farms. And this is also a state of how these aqua proteins are needed for human lives. Yeah, this is the growth of the fishing farms of salmons. Because of time, I'm just short look here. And this is the situation we also have, like we shared in Turkey, these land-based aquaculture technologies. We could also call recirculation aquaculture systems that you can see from here. It takes smaller land and higher efficiency. It's using the recirculation of the waters for the fish farms. Our customers like Nutrico and they have also investing in these IIS systems in China, in Ningbo, and Xinjiang country. Okay, this is the numbers. The third part is the key points of the feed processing. So this is a typical feed processing flow diagram for aqua feed. And we have different sections here, from the loading of the raw material until the final packing of the pallets. I have divided them by sections of sections. We'll go through them. The technology of improving the quality of the feeds, there are something we have to, pay attention to. First of all, here in Russia, we are normally dealing with cold water fishes like salmon and trout. And both of these fishes need a high percentage of fats and proteins. So how to make feeds with high percentage of the protein and fat, but also you have to keep the feeds with long retention time of the water durability. That's a problem of solving with the pre-cooking and extruder. And this is about the whole processing line of less residues or broken rest of the pellets, such as we have to short the progress, we make a lower drop of the pellets when coming out, and like the anti-fall systems, the flow control, and optimize the feed directions. Okay, this is basically the intake section of the whole feed plant. It depends, when someone are planning to invest a feed plant, you will firstly have to calculate how much capacity that you want to invest for your own farm fish plant, or you can use them as a commercial feeds. Then you can calculate how much raw materials you needed and how you're going to storage them. Normally, you can storage them into steel silos, concrete silos, or even warehouses. And depending on what kind of transportation it comes, like trucks or even big bags, we have different intake sections to storage them. And the second thing is about the first mixing and batching and fixed mixing systems. The general materials, such like the protein and starch materials with the premixes. It depends on if the premixes is fine enough. If it's fine enough, it can go to the second mixing. Here we put in the first grinding and use the first mixing. And then it comes with the second grinding and second mixing. Okay, here comes this number with first grinding and second grinding. I have a number of here. We have two kind of hammer mills. Normally from Europe, they use two stages of hammer mills to go fine enough to feed for the big fishes like the trout and the and salmon. But for us, we prefer to use a pulverizer, because the pulverizer gives you a more fine product, which comes with a 80 mesh that's around 150 microns. With a better grinding mesh, the feeds which coming out will be better cooked and easy for the digestion, especially for the baby fishes. And also it can, raise the capacity of the extruder. The next part is about the general feeds of how it looks like for the salmon and trout. Small baby fishes come with 0.6 millimeter, 0.8, and 1 millimeter. Big ones need 10 or 12 millimeters. And with these big pellets, how to solve them? I mean, the pellets during the transportations, how to solve the problem of deshaping and deformings. That's how you shorten the processing flow. The next part is about the extruding and drying line, which is the main part of the whole processing lines. I present two parts here. The first one is very short process, which the dryer is directly under the extruders. When the pellet is coming off the dryer, it's soft, and it will be very easy to get deshaped after long transportations, especially use mechanical transportation. That's why if there is no limit for the workshop, it's better to put the dryer directly under the extruder to shorten the pass. Or there is another way, like the second picture in the right here, that you don't have enough height or places. We suggest to use a general, like a Z-belt, to easy the transportation, soft transportation of the softer pellets. And this is about the preconditioning. The preconditioning is it's just pre-cooking. The raw materials after grinding, they will be mixed with steam here, and with the conditioning time, it can be sanitized. And after pre-cooking, the capacity for the extruders will be also raised. This is the some examples about better cooked and not better cooked. From the left one, the dark colors are the pellets which have better cooking effect, and the right one which is not well cooked, and the digestion efficiency will be lower for the fish. Okay. This is the final part of the processing lines about coating and the packing lines. The fat content we need for trout and salmon, it depends on the time. In the summer times for trout, totally it can be 17, and in the winter times it goes to 20. But for salmon, even in the summer times, it can be goes to 22, and in the winter times it goes 27, even 30% of the oil in the total recipe. But in the material itself, it only contains about 5% of the oil. The rest of the 25% of the oils, you have to add them through the whole lines. The coater is mostly of the oils which can be added. So that's why we need the vacuum coaters to control the density of the pellets and the adding rate of the oil. And then we go for the packing. Well, according to the packing lines, they have different kind of shapes. We have big bags, small bags, bulk bags. Mostly it depends on the customers. They are producing feeds for their own farms or doing commercial farms. It's just an option of the market. This is the coater of our. This is our vacuum coaters. How much oil can be put in the coater, it depends on the temperature of the pellets, the moisture content of the pellets. And it's all LP can control in the processing, like the density controls, and after dryer there's a pre-cooler system to reduce the moisture content. And here we present some examples of the coated pellets with different colors of different diameters. So that's pretty much about it. The last one is the liquid adding system. Surely you will need a different kind of oils. We have animal fats, we have plant oils, and we even can use some special oil like a coating oil for the surface. But they have, because of different formality and shapes of these oils, we have to add through different places and with different pumps. And this is some examples we have made here locally. So that's basically about it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. So I know that now the negotiations are being held about the cooperation, potential cooperation with your company from some farm companies from Russia. So are you commissioning plants from scratch, and what is the potential capacity that you can provide? Because the need on the Russian market is about 200,000 tons per year.
Hello. Yeah, actually, I think the capacity for the Russian market is even higher. It's about somewhere, as what the figures that I got is about 270,000 tons per year. And here we can produce, for now, we can produce about 50,000 tons per year. And there are several major producers for right now. And as for the capacity of the lines that we can make, it's not that easy to answer how big you can make, because it depends on one line or two lines. One line we can make it up to 15 tons per hour. But if you even need bigger ones, we can add another line 1, line 2. So basically that depends on what is the capacity that you need it.
Спасибо. Ну, рассчитываю.
Thank you. We hope that, taking into consideration the support measures that are taken by the government and already has been introduced, so in the nearest future, hopefully, we will have those plans commissioned. About 6 years ago, in Skolkovo, they announced such a project as the use of AI and big data for aquaculture. Unfortunately, we have not seen that put into practice. However, we already have examples of the most state-of-the-art technologies being actively used. Mr. Krasnoborodka is not only a person who directly deals with aquaculture, but he's also an expert in new areas, smart farms. When will we see them, and do you already have such an example? Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to thank the organizers of the forum for this invitation to be here today. The clicker doesn't seem to work. Okay. So I'm a candidate of technical science, oceanologist. I have been working in this sector for 30 years. My specialization is the designing, building, and operation of farms in different countries. And the closed types of this facility, it can be an integrated breeding of fish and aquaponics. And this year I have launched a small one in 2 basins of diameter of 2 meters. It is for sturgeons and also for salads. And overall, I have built several dozens of farms in various countries, from Sweden to, and I've built a lot of RAS. And in 2016, I built this farm on the 3rd story of technological plant in China, the black caviar. RAS was built. A lot of materials were published about it in the Geographical Journal. They published it, and also there was a video on the Euronews channel. And in Russia, in Alexin, we built that in Tulsk region, and here you can see how fish breeder is monitoring this breeding process, and also we have the chips for all the sturgeons. We have the database with the history for each female of it, and the final product is black caviar. We have developed the special reporting system for fish farms because everything is being digitalized around the world, and we've developed a cloud server to track, to control your farm using, for example, your laptop or your mobile phone. It is free of charge. We introduced that in several countries, both in Russia and in Europe, and some farms have already switched to using those programs. And I've also seen such a trend among fish breeders that they're sitting in their farm, like in their own house, and they think that their production is unique. But I think that we should share our experience, share information in order to gather together all the big data that further on can be used by neural network to develop further data. Their large data volume is quite important in this sector. Our program has been translated into 4 languages, and the farm that is visualized in the form of a basin. And here we see the information of each basin, and each digit serves each task, and we see the water parameters and the oxygen concentration in the basin. And here you can see several basins, and we see some fluctuations in oxygen in the process of feeding fish, because when fish is eating, the level of oxygen is increasing. So we automatically gather the data from all the devices and automatically feeds the fish. So let's continue. Here I'd like to tell you about AI, Yandex Elisa, and it facilitates the communication between feed breeder and the server that tracks the process on the farm. And you can use your voice with the Russian language in the application, which is called Smart Farm Yandex Elisa. You can watch how it works on my YouTube channel.
So it is possible to use a Telegram bot to control the farm, to communicate with the cloud service, to send instructions and receive notifications in your mobile phone. No need to pay for SMS messaging. VR, virtual reality. We have a game. It is a fish farm. You can learn aquaculture by playing a game. So the game is about inheriting a cottage. You start growing either trout or sturgeon, and you farm fish, you get money, you redecorate the house. Of course, the aim of the game is to have a sturgeon farm built, and the real figures of the growth of sturgeon and trout, the real prices of feeds, all the real figures. It is possible to add receiving banking loans, etc., different features. And the gamer can undertake to farm fish, and the maximum number of the reservoirs is 10. You can set the norms of feeding fish. You can track the concentration of the oxygen, the density of seeding. They get disease, you will have to fight and to treat the fish, and the computer prompts you what are the stresses for the fish, what should be done to help fish not to think about bad things, but just to be benevolent and grow. And talking about automation, microcontrollers are cheaper. There's a P1, and it is less than one. ESP01 is less than $1, and it has analog and digital inputs and outputs, and it is possible to implement the local web server using this particular controller. And I have assembled the pH controller. The body is fabricated by the 3D printer, and so both the pH of the water and the electrical conductivity of the water could be measured, and it could be adjusted and calibrated for pH 7. And here is an internet module available. It is connected to the internet to transfer the data to the cloud server automatically. These are smart feeding devices with Wi-Fi. I have designed those and used the 3D printer. There is a nice silo for 6 kgs of the feed, and there is no silo. You could use any other vessel. They are hooked up to the cloud server, and the temperature sensors could be installed on it. It is important to know the temperature of the water when feeding fish. Of course, it is stable in the RAS system, but if it's open water, then the temperature fluctuates. There are also pendulum type feeders, and you can the fish when they feel like it, they just drag the pendulum, and the feed is ejected into the water. I can supplement the feeding device with weights, with gauges. There is the so-called RAS marketplace. You can place your advertisement over there and find the equipment. There is another place where you can get information on the RAS system. You can look for the videos on RAS, and I have chat bot, and it is scanning the internet, finding the information on RAS. And I think the full automation of the production using AI, that's where the future of the aquaculture belongs to. And that's the bot that is on the lookout for new videos. Thank you for listening. To answer your question regarding smart aqua farms, I believe that the digital productions, digitalization could be applied and introduced not only at the green projects of aqua farms, but at the brown projects as well. No major refurbishment. Okay, thank you, Vasily. There's another question, and your game, is it free or everything is free at my resources? I think we will instruct our universities to make use of the game, because the practices, the experience indicates, and that's what was proven at the previous session yesterday at talking about finding jobs. Our graduates and students, they do not have practical experience, and I think it will be useful for them to practice first digitally using the VR. So digital production, digital technologies are not only used for production, but also at oversight and supervision. And I would like to give the floor to Artem Daushev from the regulatory watchdog, Rossельхознадзор, oversight agency. Indeed, the future belongs to that kind of farms, as the previous speaker has been talking, but most of the farms now use water bodies, and that's why it's necessary to pay attention to such things as protecting the aquatic animals from diseases. And now I will be giving you the bullet points, and I would like to request to list through the slides which are dangerous for the aqua. And there is a high concentration of species, and there is a deterioration of the balance, and there are technological stresses. It affects the state of the fish and results in the disease. The high density of population results in the fast development of the disease, causing high mortality of the aquaculture. One of the problems is virus infection. There are more than 300 viruses that have been identified. Many of those are very detrimental for the agriculture. And when baby fish are affected, it's a huge loss for the farmers. Norway The US, Japan, Canada, and the other countries regularly monitor the situation for pathogens. We do have such a research as well, and when the amount of the species is growing and regularly, the situation with the diseases is in the world is quite serious, especially in the countries that provide seeding materials. That's why controlling the quality of the seeding material when it is being taken to Russia from the unfavorable countries is the main strategy as far as veterinary control is concerned. Analyzing the situation over the past 3 years, it has been determined that such countries as Estonia, Iraq, Belize, the US, Japan, Norway, Greece, Italy, Iran have suffered economically from the catching diseases. Quite a huge damage in the EU has been caused by the epidemic necrosis. Finland lost 1 million of the species of rainbow trout. Besides Denmark and Finland, the necrosis was discovered in Germany, Croatia, and some other countries. Talking about the prevention of the damage from water hydrobionts, it is necessary to stress that diagnostics should be heightened and prevention measures should be taken. Laboratory testing should be enhanced, and the laboratories should be equipped with all the necessary equipment, especially those that do exist at the farms. It's necessary to control and monitor the feeds that are imported into this country. The role of science is high, and scholars and scientists should be engaged for this oversight and control activities to be effective. Talking about the information systems, I would like to state that conjunction of the information system is the main type of activity of Rosprirod-Nadzor, and it is important to track the products throughout the chain, starting from the feeds and then all the stages of production of the aquaculture all the way to the end user. We have a conjunction of the information systems with the customs, with the other law enforcement, and we cooperate with the law enforcement agencies to prevent poaching, to encourage the bona fide producers. In 2022, more than 2,000 tons of the products of unknown origin were discovered. And this was done with the help of the information system of ours. That is Mercury and the others. We make use of the artificial intelligence to identify the suspicious transactions, to block the users that were suspected in illegal transactions. It also helps to search for and find the batches of the products, thus eliminating the offenses. In 2022, we have identified 80 phantom sites where suspicious transactions were performed. In 2021, we have also identified some 80 sites like that. Rossельхознадзor regulatory body is interacting with the international partners and international organization, FAO, and also the World Organization on the Protection of the Health of the Animals, providing for the transparency. These are the figures of the import of seeding materials, and you can compare it with the situation I'm talking about. So we cooperate with the international organizations to ensure, to facilitate the transparency in the production of feeds for aquaculture as well. We participate in the development and improvement of the international standards for veterinary products and fight the resistance of the organism to antibiotics, which facilitates the high level of respect for the food products exported from Russia. Rossельхознадзор has leading positions among the authorities as far as transparency is concerned. We are in the top 5 agency as far as our transparency and openness is concerned. We build the trustworthy relations with the business partners, thus forging the atmosphere of the openness and transparency for the bona fide participants of the market, both in this country and abroad. And this is important for promotion of the products to the external markets among the strong competition between the producers. Ready to answer your questions. Thank you. I would like to add, indeed, Roslybarovstvo and Sельхознадзор, the fishery agency and the regulatory watchdog, have quite a good communication to track the chain of custody, and you can find the information of such an interaction on black caviar, for example, and you can check how the chain of custody could be tracked. One of the leading regions in terms of development of the aquaculture is Karelia, and I would like to give floor to Mr. Vladimir Lobinov, who is responsible for the development of this industry in Karelia. Thank you. Good afternoon. Geographically, 90% of the territory of Karelia is occupied by rocks, forestry, and water. And there's a lot of water area, and it's a prerequisite for the aquaculture industry to be developing in Karelia. It is quite a new industry in Karelia. The first entrepreneurs that started the business is the late 90s. By the way, Nikolai Fedorenko, he has just entered the conference hall, and he's one of the leading businessmen of aquaculture in this country. So the trends for development, there is a growth, 35,000 tons in 21, and the growth rate is between 8 and 10% in the past 5 years. The major species farmed is trout, almost 80%. And some other species as well. And we have also farm blue mussels. The first commercial blue mussel will arrive from the water area of the White Sea next year. And the growth rate made it possible for Karelia to be among the leaders. We are number 3 in terms of the amount, and the share is 10%. And as far as trout is concerned, we believe it is 70%. Sometimes the Fishery, the agency for Fishery, give us even a higher figures. Actually, we are number 1 in terms of farming trout. So the policies of the government of Karelia is to facilitate the development of the aquaculture industry by giving state support not only to increase the amount of farming, but to change the structure of the aquaculture. First of all, I mean the diversification of the structure. For the past 5 years, we have been applying such an efficient technique for providing incentives to develop processing infrastructure. And we provide 30% compensation to the farmers, that the money that is used for building the processing workshops. And it increased the amount of the processed products. And there are 24 plants. There were 24 large, there were 13 small ones in 2017. And the measures result in the tax proceeds, jobs, new jobs are created, new value is added, making the industry legalized and more legal, transparent.
And the feeding material was produced and manufactured at one of large facilities, Virta. This is the name of it. And now we see that the growth rates of aquaculture development are more than we can cover with the existing facilities. So we're offering a new tool, a compensation of the cost of the project documentation for RAS systems, and it gives them the opportunity to get compensation for the RIS equipment, also the production of the feed and the forage. We have one plant that was commissioned in 2017, and the last year volume amounted to 7.5 thousand tons per year, and we need capacity up to 50,000 tons. And we have had negotiations with feed producers, but we did not make much progress because of the pandemic also. And as for some positive developments over the last year, we did have some progress with Mr. Ponomarenko. They are currently building a plant for the feed up to, with the capacity up to 50,000 tons. And one of our speakers today, our representative from China, is helping with that. And hopefully next year it will be commissioned. And then we will move away from the import dependency that we currently have. I hope that the decisions that were made by the government and the possibility of having compensation on the federal level will give an additional impetus to building new feed producing capacities on the territory of the Republic of Karelia, because we have the potential and opportunities for this purpose. Another area we are focusing on, the increase of the processing capacities. We need to produce the marketing and branding in the respective shops. We already did that in Moscow and St. Petersburg. We participated in the state bidding for an agro-tourism grant, and we won in one of these competitions. And we will present several projects more in the future. And I think that aquaculture has all the prerequisites to be actively developed in beautiful regions together with tourism development. And the general area, and it has been mentioned by the majority of the speakers today and yesterday, so moving away from the caged system to RAS systems and talking about Karelia, it is a distant prospect still because our open water areas are quite good, and it is our competitive advantage that we will be making advantage of in future. However, we do stimulate the additional capacities not only for producing the feeding material, but also having like 100, 200, 500 grams, making it bigger so that it takes smaller time to breed in water. And then we have brought them into the natural environment, and it helps us to adjust the economy of our production. Another support measure is the meliorative work in some water areas. It is not relevant for all the regions, but still it is being used. We do study the possibilities there, and we have already used it and put it into practice. The role of aquaculture in the economy of Karelia over the last 5 years, we increased the employment 1.5 times, and that was achieved thanks to the new processing facilities. We also got 2 times higher tax proceeds. We still have the dependency that we have to overcome in future, dependency on import, on feeding materials. And in order to eliminate this dependency, we have to continue, we have to embark on a dialogue with the federal center. And this mechanism of compensating the costs can be viewed as one of the possibilities. The production of fish feeding, combined feed, and not only state enterprises could serve as a base for that. I think that there is a room for private businesses as well. We have also to stimulate additional infrastructure and additional facilities for RAS systems. Thank you for your attention. Vladimir Vitalyevich, we would like to hear about your future plans, just briefly, because before that we had 30,000, that was the limit, seen as a limit, and now you have reached 50. And what about the future? What do you think can be reached? Well, it is a widespread vision, 30,000 tons. It is not substantiated with anything. So this figure is based on the research in 100 water areas, and here we have about 600,000. So it cannot be extrapolated for overall results. But the practice shows that we have exceeded this limitation, and it will be growing continuously. And I'd like to note that today we do not have any scientific conclusion that would show the connection between the change of some parameters in water areas and trout production. And we can see some connection with the housing facilities and some manufacturing facilities. So we have huge potential in Karelia to be still unlocked. We do not have road infrastructure and engineering utilities infrastructure in some of the regions, and in some water areas we need equipment of larger capacity. We have not used Onega and Ladoga water areas, and trout production is a new young industry in Karelia, so their production facilities and capacities are not insufficient right now. We have also the water area in the White Sea, and there is one enterprise that is successfully using the breeding of trout, and they have used it during one season in the salty water. The conversion of the feed was quite high. The growth rates were high as well, and the features of the fish were different. So in this regard, we have sufficient water areas. I'm not ready today to give you some specific figures for this potential, because any figure I can name should be substantiated with some numerical calculation. Those 30,000 tons, it is not substantiated with anything. I'd like to reiterate that. Thank you. So now you have built this bridge to science, and science in aquaculture is science and intensive area. Also, it is about selection. And it has been done for decades of years, and now the process is speeded up. And Mr. Nikolai Mugo, who is the director of the Department of Molecular Genetics from VNIRO, could you please tell us about the achievements you have made and how fast new scientific developments could be introduced into production? Good morning, dear colleagues. I'd like to briefly elaborate on the genetic tools that we have, and this is an introduction to the tools that now exist in the selection process, in getting new high productive lines. And I will tell you also about what we are doing in our practice. So this slide is well known for everybody. So aquaculture has reached and will reach about half of the catch, and it will be in parity in a natural environment. But of course, it gives grounds for fish breeders, but we should not be excessively proud of it, because if we take a look at the distribution across countries, China is far ahead of other countries. But if we take a look at the overall picture for Europe and for the US, it still has not gained such a growth. But in Southeast Asia, in China, large percentage of the feeding material we did purchase, that about 95% imported in Karelia, and in the EU and in the US, the situation is quite similar. And the most science-intensive area and section of production is the selection and the breeding of this feeding material. And as for the efficiency of agricultural animals, the 20th century was the age of genetics, because it was born at the beginning of this century, and it grew a lot during all these 100 years, and we saw the growth of about 2.5 times. As for aquaculture, many interesting things happened, but much later. And selection of salmon, it was initially a Russian development, then it was developed also in Norway. And as for the efficiency of the feeding material, it is 2 times higher than the one in wild fish in natural environment. And this efficiency means that we need less feed, and it is fast in terms of breeding. So wild salmon is not breeded at all in the world, and up to now we used to be fully dependent on Norwegian feeding material, and the same applies to trout. The efficiency is not so high than in the case of salmon, but it is quite different in terms of old types and new types, species, Polish, French, Norwegian, and American ones. They demonstrate better indicators than the old types and species that did not change from the past century. In Russia, as for genetic technologies, we lagged behind during the the beginning of the 21st century. Back in 2001, the deciphering of the human genome, and then, of course, it paved the way for further development. The ruling of the government that was issued in April 2019 up to 2022 and 2027. The first grants were given to the Institute of Kurchatov, but it was not about fish back then, but in 2022 we understood that genetic technologies should be introduced into agriculture, so some amendments were introduced into this ruling as well. So since last year, we have got this support from the Ministry of Education, from genomic markers, and we study genome of the majority of carp and trout, and we have been doing that for salmon as well. And we launched this work for genome for this very promising species of fish. And now, just some biological information. What are we dealing with? What are we talking about? Of course, we, all the fish breeders, trout breeders, would like to get the best qualities, like the feed conversion at a higher rate and higher speed, and so on and so forth. And all of this can be improved thanks to some genetic selection processes. So first of all, the first step to be taken is to study the feature, whether it changes or is it different in different species of fish. There can be a huge gap. For example, some fish cannot be so active in eating, or is there a genetic component? So the second thing, after we see this difference and this gap between fat, for example, in a fillet of the fish, the next step is the so-called family analysis. So we check the genetic component. Is it there? Is it present there? And biotech technology that is currently being used, you take caviar from one female, and then you just divide that into 10 parts, and you breed that up to the trait state that you'd like to achieve, and then you analyze the features that you are interested in and the semen, and then for each male species you analyze that, and we see the clear difference for the male species, and then we see that it depends on the quality of the fast growing, and the genetic component does play an important part in the overall result, irrespective of which female and male species we are dealing with. So this was used back then in the last century, but then when we continue this work, we need to understand how it happens and to study the genome quite deeply and profoundly to understand which part of a genome is the leading one, GWAS, the Genome-Wide Association Studies. This research helps us to get the results and to understand the connection between the indicators that you are studying. The next stage, and this is one of my last slide of the introduction, the so-called marker-assisted selection, when you use these markers that you have found and then you use them in tested population, and then you analyze the contribution that was made by this marker, and you give weight to each of the locus, and after each test you offer this marker-assisted selection for industrial use, for feeding material, selecting the manufacturers that are not waiting until this process is over, those who have the locus and the features that you think are the most promising one. So you speed up 2 to 4 times the selection process, and this is the trend that is used all around the world in order to speed up the process, the results that we want to get in the selection process.
So we make use of this selection, and we use the polymorphism that exists in the wild population. And in the aquatic populations, there are 2 notions. One is genetically modified organism, GMO. And I know only one example, and it is the so-called aqua-advantaged salmon, and clearance was received to farm it. So modification is introducing the alien material into the genome of a species, and it helped to grow the species within 18 months instead of 36 months, but GMO is quite a problem. In Russia, it is forbidden to use GMO. In some countries, it is okay to use it, like in Kazakhstan, for example. There are issues with it in the US. There are fears that the genetically modified species would start crossbreeding with the wild salmon, and it could be quite a problem. Another thing is genome editing, and it is the initial mechanism with bacteria being protected from virus, and why making use of this instrument? Because this bacteria is under the bacteria virus load, and if it survives, it has inbuilt a certain gene into its DNA, and it's good for it. In this case, the intervention of the virus is recognized, and the virus is being killed. So this particular mechanism, this particular means is being used, and we have received a grant for genome editing, and we use fish to study this mechanism, and it is something new type of research in the world, to say nothing about Russia. And genome edited is not covered by the law, whether it is banned or not. it is not introducing new genetic material. It is just modifying. It is just changing one letter. It could change on its own as a mutation. But anyway, that kind of activity is being undertaken at the starting stage, but it's going on. And now the question mark is how can we find the portion of the genome that is responsible for the good signs? GWAS is a good thing, but it gives a vague, fuzzy picture. It just shows the large section of the chromosome that are correlated with the positive signs. What could be done? We use our work on the different species. It will be difficult to deal with the trout, but here are the example with smelt. And you can see that the difference in chromosome is only less than 1% related to markers. But if we look closer, the number of the markers is growing and then is going down. And under the top, if we just spread it, we will see the sequence, and there are some mutations over here which change the protein. Amino acids are replaced, and it means that functions are replaced. And so we can concentrate on 1-2 position out of 1,000 options, and this way pinpoint the part of the genome that's responsible for the positive sign. Another method is selection sweep. It is evolution, but man-made, and the species have been selected quite strictly, and the mutations that were consolidated show what happened, and we can find the proper points in the genome. And the last things, we know quite a little about the genome of man. We know 10%. It is the code, these sections that are conservative and functional. But 80% is just gray area. We don't know anything. But to understand the genome of the fish, we have to study the species that have big differences in phenotype. And we have been dealing with the species in Lake Baikal that have quite a number of populations, including the Baikal pigfish. These are quite young species, but they have differences, and they are relatives, but quite different. Some is either small and the other is big, and it all deals to genetics. And there are fish that have some 5% of lipids, and another one which shows white over here, it has 45% of fat. And if we identify the differences in the genomes of these species, we will understand then what sections of genome are responsible for what features. Now, getting back to the genome project for aquaculture. Initially, we did not committed to develop some productive lines, but we have undertaken for the ongoing work, we develop the panels of markers that are responsible for the high productivity. We do that for carp and trowel, and there is some academic subject matter, and then we are dealing with the genome editing. We are cooperating with the major stakeholders of the aquaculture, and we call upon everyone for cooperation, and it gives us an important database, and I think we should think about the conventional species as well that are found by the majors. So here are the results of the genetic work for 2021. We have not summed up yet the work for 2022. I'm not talking about all the figures, but the red shows the Norwegian Atlantic salmon, and the other color codes are never salmon, different fresh fish, freshwater salmon, and they provide different markers. And the aquaculture salmon is out of the line with the others, and it means that there are genetic markers interested to it, and we are looking closely into it. And there are different genetic markers for different species of carp, and we can identify what genome sections are responsible for the phenome. And one is Amur carp, and then there is different species of the carp. So what is the practical application? It is necessary to set up the high productive lines, and to do that we should set up the selection centers. Many farms plan, or they set up their selection centers to make the seeding material safe, and it is good. But I think we should take up the experience of Norway, and in Norway it was public partnership, public-private partnership, and they involved the academia into this work, and this because aquaculture is in high demand for science. It is science intensive, and it is smart. So the panel of the markers that we receive, and we will complete the work next year, because it is not possible to deal in selection without the panel of markers, and our work is a starting point. And the genome for editing will require the legislative work as well, but if we overcome all the obstacles, we will be able to more successfully be engaged in the selection work. The government provides support to us, and here is the introduction of the changes into the federal law of 950, and it is related to the national genome stock of fish. But I don't understand what actually it is, but I think it's just related to the genetic selections. So this work has standards, and the legislators are also targeting this area. Thank you. Thanks. And the strategy for the development of the agro-industrial complex sets targets to double the production of the aquaculture. Bank, Rossellhoz is interested, and they provide their expertise of whether these plans could be implemented or not. Let's have a talk of Mr. Andrei Dalnov from Rossellhoz Bank. And so I won't be talking about Rossellhoz Bank. I will talk about our experience in aquaculture. We are not financial analysts and in the agriculture, and we are not responsible for what will happen at the markets. And initially, we have set a think tank, and we are monitoring some prices for meat, for example. Sometimes we outsource the pool of experts we communicate with. Mostly it is related to the greenhouse vegetables, and which have quite a good expertise for it. And so we make reports and we share the information. I have named my aquaculture, my report, my talk, Aquaculture Plus. And I am happy that my talk was preceded by Mr. Thuchai from Thailand. And he has referred to the internet use in the aquaculture industry. That kind of figures were shown by some other speakers, and these plans are indeed quite ambitious. And one can see the yellow bar that it is developing faster than any other sectors, just behind Turkey. So aquaculture is growing quite fastly indeed. We believe 60 billion rubles will be needed to invest into the aquaculture. Rossellhoz-Bank has aquaculture as one of their priority, and the Ministry of Agriculture called upon us to be leaders in the industry, and it matches our strategy. So how could Rossellhoz-Bank help besides investing? Statistically, we can see that if you look at the breakdown by regions, there are leaders and outsiders, and leveling the consumption is a factor that might be quite helpful to develop the aquaculture. Of course, it will be developing where there are water bodies with the flowing water, and which region will be a winner. Of course, Karelia is a region that has large resources. The other areas, of course, the other regions could use RAS technologies like vertical farms for prawns. Would be highly interested to see that kind of farm. The prospects for aquaculture are good. The aquaculture could diversify the production in terms of the different species. And the aquaculture is mostly small and medium enterprises. Small enterprises have the legal form of being individual entrepreneur, and the problems of the markets are the common problems for the SME. And if we analyze the situation, and if we analyze the products of the SME and large holdings, we can see that one of the disadvantages of the small enterprises is the location of the stores. That's what large companies can provide, but the quality, the quality of the taste and look could be worse with the large companies. And another factor is the convenience of purchasing and the convenience. It is you can check the SMEs versus large holdings. With the development of the e-commerce, the products could be physically accessible both from the MSE and large companies. And I know that the federal companies have a program of the farmers' shelves, but if we talk about the growth of the influence of the federal retail chains, we can see that it is developing, and the right graph shows that the e-commerce is developing, and it's good for the SME. We are happy that we have a platform that includes the farmers' products, fish products, and that's why we help not only financing, but we have some other tools to help the SMEs and aquaculture farms. So I call upon the producers to join these e-commerce platforms, and I would like to apologize that I am the last one between you and your lunch. Thank you. Dear colleagues, we have concluded our agenda, and on behalf of myself and the listeners, I would like to thank the speakers. The talks were very interesting, and in the remaining day and a half, I'm sure you will still have an opportunity to talk with the speakers, and I call upon you to visit the stands of the aquaculture farmers as well. Thank you.